This video covers how to read a 10K and how to find the financial information you're interested in a 10K. So let me share my screen. I'll share this screen. And I have here pulled up the Form 10K of Uber Technologies Incorporated. And let's just go through the Uber 10K, and by doing that, you'll learn what's in a 10K and where to find it. So if I go down to the table of contents of this thing, it has a few different parts to it. And the parts aren't actually all that meaningful. The items are what is meaningful. So item 1 is called business. It talks about the industry that Uber is in and what their products and services are, and that kind of thing, strategic information. Item 1A are the risk factors. This is going to be a list of risks. So written out, a list of risks that Uber faces. And if they encounter those risks, their business could get into some trouble. And so 1A is just a required list of risks for Uber. 1B, unresolved staff comments, that's usually empty. It relates to when the SEC has problems with the 10K, they don't like something that Uber wrote, they don't understand something that Uber wrote, they'll send a comment letter to Uber. And if any of those comment letters are unresolved, they'll have to put them in this item 1B of their 10K, because Uber creates this 10K. So this is all the responsibility of Uber's management. They are the ones creating this 10K and then filing it with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Item 2 says properties, so that's all the physical properties that Uber owns. Item 3 is legal proceedings, any litigation that Uber is involved in. Item 4 is called mine safety disclosures, and this is obviously only relevant for mining companies, and it has to do with any safety violations that a mining company has. Investors have now, because this was a law that was passed, have the right to know if a mining company has engaged in any safety violations. So that's item 4. Item 5, this is in part 2 now, market for the registrant's common equity. So this has to do with where does the stock trade? Does it trade on a stock exchange like the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ? Or does it trade on something else like a private exchange? So item 5 tells you where does this stock trade. If you want to buy or sell your shares, where should you go to do that? Item 6 is selected financial data. We're going to go to the real financial statements, so you can ignore that for now. Item 7 is a pretty important item, management discussion and analysis. Sometimes you'll see this called the MD&A. So the management's discussion and analysis of financial condition and results of operation, that is kind of an informal look at the financial performance and financial condition of a company. So management writes that up every period and tries to provide the most meaningful information to investors about how the company is performing. That's item 7. Item 7A is more details about the risks that the company faces. So they'll have some quantitative analysis about if we face a certain risk, what will happen to our company. Item 8 is where we will spend almost all of our time in this class this semester. It's the financial statements and supplementary data. So this is very formulaic, and it's done exactly to comply with GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles. So the company is responsible for creating its own financial statements and footnotes, and all of that information is going to be in item 8 of the 10K. Item 9 is changes in and disagreements with accountants. So when companies file information with the SEC, they're required to have an independent auditor take a look at their financial statements and give an opinion on the financial statements. And specifically, the auditor's opinion is either these financial statements do fairly present the financial performance of the company, or these financial statements do not fairly present the financial performance of the company. So can you rely on these financial statements or not from an independent third party? And if there's any changes or disagreements with that independent third party, it'll be disclosed in item 9. Item 9A, controls and procedures. So companies are required to have internal controls, which is documented policies that employees of the company are required to execute these policies exactly. And they're designed so that when employees do their job and execute these policies, the result of those controls and procedures is to produce error-free financial statements. And so 9A just talks a little bit about the controls and procedures and whether management thinks that they're effective or not. 9B is other information, so I'm not really sure what's in there. Item 10 is directors, executive officers, and corporate governance. And in fact, items 10 through 14 have a lot to do with executive compensation and compensation to the auditor and other information about stockholders. And many times you won't find this information in a 10K. It's required to be referenced in a 10K, but companies are permitted to file all this information later on when they file something called a proxy statement, which is an invitation for all the shareholders to attend an annual meeting of the company. So these part 3 items, many times they're not actually disclosed in a 10K. They'll just reference to a proxy statement, which is a different form altogether. And that proxy statement will contain this information. Okay, part 4. Exhibits and financial statement schedules. So actually, if the company gets into a material agreement, signs a material agreement or anything like that, they're required to disclose those agreements, the entire text of the agreements, and they disclose those in exhibits to this Form 10K. So if you're interested in, hey, I wonder what a purchase agreement looks like for this type of a transaction, well, if you know a company that did a similar transaction, you might be able to actually find that purchase agreement in the exhibits to their 10K. And then that's pretty much it. In item 16, there's a 10K summary, exhibit index, and signatures. So the CEO and the chief accounting officer or CFO are required to sign off on this 10K. They're required to sign their name saying everything in here is accurate to the best of our knowledge, a statement similar to that. And so those are the sections of a 10K. I just want to now show you how to find the most important section for this class, which is item 8, financial statements and supplementary data. And in this 10K, it's not a hyperlink. Sometimes you can click on this thing. Here it gives you the page number, page 88. So we could just go to page 88. Those are 2 good methods. You should use those methods. If you want to get to it fast and you don't have either of those methods available, sometimes it works. And I haven't checked this beforehand, but sometimes it works to Control F. And what you want to Control F for is the word independent registered. Independent registered refers to the company's external third-party auditor, the independent registered public accounting firm. And they do a report, which is their opinion, and that usually appears right before the financial statements. So I'll just Control F for that, and then I'll search all the different instances of that. And here I found the report. So PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, is the auditor of Uber, and here is the report of that independent registered public accounting firm. And as you can see, here is the opinion on the financial statements. So if you want to see what their opinion was, here, in our opinion, I'll start there. In our opinion, the consolidated financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the company as of December 31st, 2019 and 2018, and the results of its operations and its cash flows for each of the 3 years in the period ended December 31st, 2019, in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That's GAAP. And so there we have the opinion of PwC that it's safe to go look at these financial statements and rely on them. So we'll go down through this letter, and here we've made it to Uber Technologies consolidated balance sheets. And as you can see, you can find Uber's assets, liabilities, and then their equity is down here for Uber as of December 31st, 2018 and December 31st, 2019. So here's their balance sheet. And all these numbers are in millions, except share amounts, which are reflected in thousands and per share amounts. So if you scroll down past the balance sheet, there's Uber Technologies consolidated statements of operations. And if you take a look at it, you can tell that this is the income statement. Again, these numbers are in millions, and you can find the Uber's revenue, and you can find Uber's expenses and other gains or losses or whatever Uber has to report as on their income statement during the years ended December 31st, 2017, 2018, and 2019. So there's their income statement. Here is the consolidated statements of comprehensive income. So we'll talk a little bit about this statement. We'll bring it up when we talk about investments, because sometimes gains or losses in certain types of investments will not be recognized on the income statement, but will be recognized on the statement of comprehensive income. So that's kind of a smaller statement that we'll talk about once or twice in the semester. Here's the consolidated statements of, it says mezzanine equity and equity. So don't worry about the word mezzanine equity. It's a little complicated at Uber since they're a pretty new public company. This is actually Uber's first ever 10K. And so that's what this one is, since Uber went public recently. And so this is the statement of stockholders' equity, and it shows you all of the accounts, the balance sheet equity accounts. It shows how they went from their beginning of year balances to the end of year balances, and that's the purpose of this statement. And there's a continuation of the statement of stockholders' equity. And finally, we get to the consolidated statement of cash flows. So we'll talk more about this statement we'll have an entire session dedicated to the cash flow statement. They've got cash flow from operating activities, cash flow from investing activities, and cash flow from financing activities. And the goal of this statement is to explain how the cash balance on the balance sheet went from its beginning of year balance to its ending of year balance. That's what the purpose of this statement is. And so there's the cash flow statement. And then you get to, so by the way, under each of these statements is this little comment. It says the accompanying notes are an integral part of these consolidated financial statements. So they're referring you, hey, if anything's hard to understand or you want more information about these financial statements, go down the document to the footnotes, and the footnote's going to have a whole lot more information. So now we get to the footnotes of the financial statements, and these will be numbered or lettered or something like that. Uber numbers their footnotes. So note 1, and this is typically note 1 for any company, is a description of the business and summary of significant accounting policies. So if you want to know what is Uber's revenue recognition accounting policy, what is their accounting policy for property, plant, and equipment, what is their accounting policy for investments, details about Uber's accounting policies are all going to be in this footnote number 1. And as you can see, it has a lot of different accounting policies in it, bolded. Here, their property, plant, and equipment footnote gives you the estimated useful lives that they assign to all of the different asset types in their property and equipment balance. So they assume that buildings have a 30-year useful life. So building is useful for 30 years, but land is useful forever, so indefinite, and all of the different categories of assets here. Okay, after footnote 1, let's see if we can just get there. After footnote 1 will be, holy cow. Finally, footnote 2 is on revenue, Uber's revenue. So this is a more specific footnote. It'll have tables in it. It'll describe the revenue balance that you see on the income statement. It'll just be a more detailed description of that revenue balance and how it's calculated. That's footnote 2. And companies will have different footnotes because different accounts are significant for different companies. So for Uber, revenue is what's really emphasized. And how does that revenue number make it onto the income statement? How is it calculated? So they describe that further in this footnote. Footnote 3, investments and fair value measurements. And so I won't go through all these footnotes, but they'll have footnotes on many of their significant balances that you find on the financial statements. And when you want more information about something on the financial statements, go to the footnotes. So here's the property and equipment footnote, and it has the amount that they've actually invested in all these categories of assets. And it'll subtract out accumulated depreciation and have property and equipment net. And you'll be able to tie, for example, you'll be able to tie this number back to the balance sheet. So you know that this is a detailed listing of their property and equipment where the total balance appears on the balance sheet. Okay, that's it. So we just went through the contents of a 10K and how to find the financial statements within a 10K. And that was the purpose of this video. So I hope it was helpful, and that's it. Bye-bye.